I carried our marriage alone, and now they say divorce makes me cruel. I'm Abby, 30F, and I think I'm about to set my entire life on fire. To the outside world, I'm the strong one. I'm the one who handles everything. But inside, I am hollow. I am married to Bo, 43M, and if you asked his family, I am the villain of this story. They tell me I'm kicking a man while he's down. But the thing is, Bo has been down for the better part of a decade, and I'm the one who's been holding him up until my own bones are starting to snap. We met 8 years ago. I was 22, still full of that naive, I can change the world energy. Bo was 35, a new hire at the company where I'd been working for 6 months. He was magnetic. In a gray office full of people staring at spreadsheets, Bo was Technicolor. He was funny, he was loud, and he had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when he talked to you. He was going through a divorce with his ex-wife and had a long-distance girlfriend at the time, so we started as friends. We'd sit in the break room for hours. I'd listen to him talk about his childhood in the Midwest, how his mom was an addict, how the streets basically raised him, how he'd had to fight for every scrap of respect he ever got. I felt for him. I felt a deep, protective empathy for this man who seemed so resilient despite a traumatic past. Then came the call. 6 months into our friendship, he called me crying. His mom had kicked him out. He had nowhere to go, no savings, and his car was on its last legs. I lived with my parents at the time, strict, religious, but kind-hearted people. I convinced them to let him stay in our guest room. The day he moved in was the day the mask started to slip, though I was too young to see it. He moved in with 3 garbage bags of clothes and a mountain of bad luck stories. We started dating almost immediately. My parents insisted on separate bedrooms, but in the quiet hours of the night, we'd talk about our future. I thought I was building a life. In reality, I was opening a door I wouldn't know how to close for 8 years. The red flags didn't wave, they screamed. Within the first month of him living at my parents' house, the hygiene and habit issues began. Bo didn't just forget to do dishes, he seemed fundamentally incapable of perceiving them. I'd find a bowl of cereal with milk crusted into the porcelain tucked under the edge of the guest bed. I'd find his socks, damp and smelling of the warehouse, balled up behind the sofa. When I'd bring it up, the argumentative Bo would emerge. He doesn't just disagree, he litigates. He would spend 2 hours arguing about why he didn't see the dish, or why the way I asked him to clean it was disrespectful to his manhood. He'd demand proof that his habits were a problem. If I showed him the mess, he'd pivot to his childhood trauma. I didn't have a mother who taught me these things, Abby. You're lucky you grew up with a silver spoon. My silver spoon was a middle-class upbringing where I was taught to clean up after myself. At the 3-month mark, I tried to break up with him. I felt it in my gut, this was too much work. I sat him down in the backyard and told him I didn't think we were a match. He didn't leave. He didn't pack his bags. Instead, he broke down. He told me I was the only thing standing between him and a bridge. He told me that if I left him, he'd have nothing. My people-pleasing heart shattered. I thought, he's fighting for us. I didn't realize he was actually fighting for his rent-free lifestyle. From 2020 to 2026, Bo's resume has looked like a game of hopscotch. He cannot keep a job. And it's never his fault. Job 1, quit because the manager looked at him wrong. Job 2, fired after calling in sick 11 times in the first 6 weeks. Job 3, quit because he wasn't feeling the vibe. The longest he has held a job in the last 7 years is 8 months. This meant that the financial burden of his life, and his past, fell on me. Bo has a son, Connor, who is now 18. When we met, Connor was 11. Bo is habitually thousands of dollars behind on child support. He blames his baby mama, Diana. He calls her names I won't repeat. He says she makes it impossible to see the boy. But I've seen the truth. I've seen Bo go 6 months without even sending a text to his son. I've seen him choose a new video game over paying the $200 he owed for Connor's school supplies. In 7 years, I bet we haven't seen that boy 75 times. It's a tragedy, and Bo plays the aggrieved father role to anyone who will listen, while I'm the one secretly Venmoing Diana money so the kid can have lunch. In 2021, my dad committed suicide. It was the lowest point of my life. I was a ghost. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I was desperately, dangerously codependent on Bo. I needed him to be my rock. Instead, he went to Ellie. Ellie was an old high school acquaintance. While I was at my dad's funeral, while I was cleaning out my dad's closet and smelling his old flannels, Bo was texting Ellie. He was meeting her. He cheated on me when I was at my most broken. When I found out, I didn't have the strength to leave. I was so afraid of being alone with my grief that I begged him to stay. I am so ashamed of that now. I told him I couldn't live without him. He graciously stayed, but he didn't apologize. He just used it as leverage. He realized that if I wouldn't leave him for cheating while I was grieving my father, I would never leave him for anything. The manipulation moved from a subtle hum to a deafening roar after that. In 2023, we moved into a rental house owned by a couple we were friends with. My mom, God bless her, saw what I couldn't. 3 days before our wedding, she called me. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Abby, please. You don't have to marry him. You can come home. I'll help you. Just don't sign that paper." I was 27. I was in love. I told her she just didn't understand his depth. We got married on a beautiful Saturday in late September. We danced, we toasted, we promised, for better or for worse. On Monday morning, Bo woke up, called his boss, and quit his job. He hasn't held a steady paycheck since. For 2 years in that rental, I was the sole provider. I worked 40+ hours at my main job. I did all the grocery shopping. I cooked every meal. I did every load of laundry. I scrubbed the toilets. Bo played video games. He'd look for work on his phone while lounging on the sofa I paid for. If I asked him to take the dog out, he'd sigh like I was asking for a kidney. When we got 4 months behind on rent because I couldn't cover his portion anymore, I took a second job. I started donating plasma. I'd sit in that clinic with a needle in my arm, watching the blood spin in the machine, just so I could buy bread and eggs. I sold my old jewelry, pieces my dad had given me. I took out 3 different credit cards just to keep the lights on. In 2025, our friends, the landlords, told us they were selling the house. They were done with the late payments and the excuses. My family wouldn't take us in because they hate Bo. My parents had moved out of state. So, we did the only thing we could, we moved into his mother's basement. And that brings us to now. 2026, I am living in a basement with Bo and his mother. I am 30 years old, and my life consists of working 2 jobs to support 3 adults. His mother decided that since I was already serving Bo, I might as well cook and clean for her too. The air in this basement is thick with resentment. Last Tuesday, I came home after a 14-hour day. The sink was full of dishes, not mine. The dog hadn't been walked. Bo was on his headset, screaming at someone in a game. I snapped. I didn't scream, I just felt the last thread of my patience snap. I told him, if I had $2,000 in my bank account right now, I would be gone. I am only here because I am too poor to leave you. He stopped his game. He looked at me with this wounded, theatrical expression. He called me cruel. He called me heartless. He told his mom, and now she stalks the hallway, muttering about vows and the sanctity of marriage. "You're kicking him while he's down, Abby," she hissed at me this morning while I was making her coffee. "He's depressed. He's struggling. A wife stays. But I've been staying. I've been staying through the unemployment, the cheating, the filth, the child support drama, and the verbal marathons. I'm $10,000 in debt because of his bad luck. I have a secret savings account now. Every week, I hide $50 from my second job tips. It's not much, but it's my freedom fund. My friends are scouted out an apartment 2 states away near my mom. I'm planning to disappear while he's at one of his interviews that he never actually goes to. His family says I'm the asshole. They say I'm abandoning a man at his lowest point. But looking at the last 8 years, I've realized something. This isn't Bo's lowest point. This is just who Bo is. And if I stay, his lowest point will eventually become my grave. Am I the a-hole for leaving a man who has nothing, even if he's the one who took everything from me? Update. 3 months have passed since I wrote that post. I remember hitting post and immediately feeling sick, like I had said something out loud that could never be unsaid. I expected maybe a handful of people to tell me I was overreacting or that marriage required sacrifice. Instead, my phone filled with responses from strangers who somehow saw my life more clearly than I did while living inside it. I didn't leave the next day. I didn't suddenly become brave overnight. What changed first was quieter than that. People in the comments started sending resources. Not vague encouragement, but actual information, numbers for legal aid clinics, domestic abuse hotlines that included financial and emotional abuse, budgeting spreadsheets, advice on how to safely separate finances without triggering confrontation, and explanations of things I had normalized for years. Several messages explained coercive dependency in a way that made my stomach drop. I had always thought abuse required screaming or bruises. Reading those comments felt like someone turning on a light in a room I'd been living in blind. One woman sent me a checklist titled, "Leaving Safely When You Share Finances." I printed it at work and folded it into my purse like contraband. That list became my roadmap. The first step was opening a bank account he didn't know about. I did it during my lunch break, hands shaking while the teller explained routing numbers. I deposited $40. It felt ridiculous at the time, almost embarrassing, but it was the first money that belonged only to me in years. Every tip from my second job started going there. Sometimes it was $20. Sometimes 10. I stopped buying small comforts for myself and redirected everything into that account. Watching the balance slowly grow became the only thing keeping me steady. I also started documenting everything. Not because I planned revenge, but because commenters warned me that divorce changes people. I began saving screenshots of texts, records of bills I paid, proof of rent transfers, credit card statements showing whose expenses were whose. The process was emotionally strange. Seeing years of financial imbalance laid out in numbers felt more honest than any argument we had ever had. Meanwhile, nothing changed in the basement. If anything, it got heavier. Bo cycled through the same pattern, grand declarations about job interviews followed by hours of gaming, followed by complaints about how no one respected him. His mom continued treating me like unpaid staff. I cooked dinners I barely ate because exhaustion had killed my appetite. Every night I lay awake calculating timelines in my head. The difference was internal. I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to convince him to understand my exhaustion. I realized I had spent 8 years presenting evidence to someone committed to misunderstanding me. Silence became less about avoidance and more about conserving energy. A few weeks after the post, one of my friends noticed something was off. I had been hiding everything out of embarrassment, convinced people would judge me for staying so long. When she asked directly if I was okay, something in me cracked. I told her everything, about the debt, the basement, the cheating, the second job, the plasma donations. I expected awkward sympathy. Instead, she got angry on my behalf in a way no one ever had before. Within days, more friends knew. Not through gossip, but because she quietly told people I trusted that I needed help. And help showed up in ways I didn't expect. One friend offered a couch anytime. Another helped me price apartments near my mom's new state. Someone else helped me review my credit report and dispute charges that weren't mine. A coworker gave me boxes and pretended they were for decluttering, so I could slowly pack essentials without drawing attention. The kindness felt overwhelming because I had spent years believing I was alone. The real turning point came about 6 weeks after my original post. I came home late, soaked from rain, and found the kitchen trashed again. Dishes stacked everywhere, food left out, the dog whining because no one had taken him out. Bo was mid-game, yelling into his headset. Something inside me went completely still. Not angry, not sad, just done. I remember realizing that nothing dramatic needed to happen anymore. There wasn't going to be one final fight that justified leaving. The justification already existed in years of quiet erosion. That night, instead of crying, I finalized a moving plan. I coordinated everything while pretending life was normal. I arranged a storage unit under my name only. I transferred my car insurance. I redirected my paychecks. A commenter had advised changing passwords slowly over time instead of all at once to avoid suspicion, so I did exactly that. Each small action felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. 2 months after the post, my savings crossed a number that finally felt possible. It wasn't a lot by normal standards, but it was enough for a deposit and first month's rent in a small apartment near my mom. Signing that lease electronically during a break at work made my hand shake so badly I had to redo the signature 3 times. I didn't tell Bo. That was intentional. People online had warned me that announcing departure too early often creates escalation, promises, guilt, anger, manipulation. I knew myself well enough to know I might fold if confronted emotionally before I was physically out. Moving day happened on a Tuesday morning while he was supposedly at an interview. My friends showed up with 2 cars and coffee like we were conducting a quiet rescue mission. We worked fast. Most of what I owned fit into boxes because I had sold or sacrificed so much already. Packing didn't feel emotional. It felt efficient, almost clinical. The strangest moment was walking up the basement stairs carrying my last bag. I paused at the doorway expecting some overwhelming wave of grief. Instead, I felt relief so strong it almost scared me. I left my key on the counter. I drove away without looking back. The first night in my new apartment was surreal. It was small, mostly empty, and smelled faintly like fresh paint. I sat on the floor eating takeout with plastic forks because I didn't own real utensils yet. The silence felt enormous. No gaming noise. No tension humming in the background. No feeling like I was waiting to be criticized or needed. I slept 12 hours straight. I didn't tell Bo immediately where I was. He started calling that evening when he realized I wasn't coming back. The messages went from confusion, to anger, to sadness, to accusations within hours. I didn't engage beyond a single message confirming I was safe and needed space. Following advice I received, I kept communication minimal and factual. 3 days later, I filed for divorce. Walking into the courthouse felt heavier than leaving the house. Signing those papers forced me to acknowledge that this wasn't temporary distance. This was the end of an 8-year chapter. My hands trembled again, but this time from grief mixed with relief. When the paperwork was officially submitted, I sat in my car and cried harder than I had in years. Not because I wanted to go back, but because I finally understood how much of myself I had abandoned trying to keep someone else afloat. Bo's reaction unfolded exactly how many commenters predicted. First came promises of change. Long messages about therapy, jobs, fresh starts. Then blame, claims that I had abandoned him during depression, that I owed him loyalty, that marriage meant sacrifice. His mother sent texts about vows and morality. I didn't argue. I forwarded communication through my lawyer and stopped responding emotionally. The distance made patterns obvious. Without daily exposure, the manipulation lost its power. Words that once would have sent me spiraling now felt scripted. My friends stepped in even more once they knew I had filed. One helped me furnish the apartment with second-hand furniture. Another showed up with groceries. Someone brought flowers, just because, and I cried over that too because it was the first time in years someone had given me something without expectation attached. Financially, things are still tight. Divorce doesn't magically erase debt. I'm still working 2 jobs for now. But every bill I pay now moves my life forward instead of maintaining someone else's avoidance. That difference changes everything psychologically. The biggest adjustment has been learning what quiet feels like. For years my nervous system was constantly braced for conflict or disappointment. Now evenings are calm. I walk the dog without rushing. I cook smaller meals. Sometimes I sit on the couch doing absolutely nothing and realize I'm not anxious. I've also started therapy using one of the low-cost resources someone messaged me. In my first session, the therapist asked a simple question: when was the last time I made a decision purely for myself? I couldn't answer immediately. That silence told me more about my marriage than any argument ever had. Looking back, I don't see a single catastrophic moment that ended things. It was accumulation. Thousands of small concessions that slowly erased my identity until strangers on the internet helped me recognize what I had normalized. I don't hate Bo. That surprised me. I feel sad for him, honestly. But compassion doesn't require self-destruction. Understanding someone's struggles doesn't mean accepting responsibility for fixing them. The guilt people warned me about did show up, especially during the first few weeks alone. I questioned whether leaving during his unemployment made me cruel. Then I realized something important: I didn't leave during a temporary crisis. I left a permanent pattern. 3 months ago I thought leaving would feel like setting my life on fire. Instead, it feels like stepping out of a burning building I had convinced myself was home. I'm still rebuilding. My credit isn't perfect. My apartment is half furnished. Some nights loneliness creeps in. But even on hard days, I don't feel trapped anymore. And for the first time in years, when I look ahead, I don't see exhaustion waiting for me. I see space.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.